Hi, I'm Becca. I wanted to talk a little bit about our crazy triplet journey. We've shared our gender reveal where Garrett got to find out the two boys and girl that we have growing and due this summer. So it really started when Garrett was about 2. We conceived him naturally in first or second month trying, and decided we wanted to start trying when he was around 18 months. After 6 months, we decided to talk to our OB/GYN and just find out maybe if there was something going on. Had an HSG done, found out that my left tube was blocked. So my OB/GYN said that she was not an expert in that area and that there were really a couple of options. One, we could find a doctor that would be willing to go in and remove that tube. Potentially there could have been a fluid backup or something that was causing our issues. Or two, we could just try on our own for another 6 months and see if the other side would produce eggs each month and potentially get pregnant on our own. So I took her advice to go find a doctor that could give us a little bit more insight. So we went to a fertility clinic in the area that was part of a larger chain. We initially said no, we didn't want to even think about IVF. So we really started down the medicated cycle path where we did 3 rounds in total of medicated cycles and just timed intercourse. No success. We did Clomid for the first 2 rounds and then Femera for the third. And then we decided we were going to try injectables and maybe start for an IUI. And during all of this, she said, the blocked tube is no big deal. We would just continue trying these unmedicated or medicated cycles and see if that helped. Um, so we were prepping for that fourth round, and we were going to try to do IUI using, I believe we used Menopur back then. It's been so long, and I've been on so much other stuff that I can't quite remember. But we got to the point where we were going to um, trigger and do the IUI, and the follicles were all on my left side, which was the blocked side. So there was really no point to go forward and do the IUI. And that was right before the summer of 2019, I believe. And I was overwhelmed. I didn't know really what we wanted to do next. Never thought we would ever be in this position. Obviously, no one does. So we decided to take a break. Took that summer just to kind of relax. Did ask a couple questions about what IVF would look like with that clinic. Unfortunately, we got a little bit of misinformation. I do have insurance coverage through work. I have about 80% coverage with a $10,000 spend maximum. So, went through all of that with their financial planners. They said, okay, we'll get you all set up. This was right after the end of summer, beginning of fall. Got called back and they said we couldn't do our treatments in the Richmond office where we're located in Virginia. We'd have to travel up to Northern Virginia, which is 2 hours away. And for IVF, that's a whole lot of appointments and a whole lot of travel that I wasn't really willing to do. So I was also a little upset because we had spent a lot of time researching and figuring out what we wanted to do, and only to find out we couldn't go forward with that clinic. So that left a really bad taste in my mouth. I was just unhappy with communication. You're already in a very vulnerable position where you're just, trying to have that other baby, and just to be stuck like that was really difficult. So, thankfully, or well, not thankfully, because I felt bad she had to go through it as well, but I had a friend who was also going through exploring IVF clinics and had found one and really liked her physician. Found a female reproductive endocrinologist, which is what I was seeking out when we went to the first clinic. But took the took the lead from her and set up an appointment with a new clinic. And we started around the same time in September of 2019. And her whole situation is very different than mine. We definitely didn't need to compare in any way, but it was very wonderful to have a buddy going through the process together. Comparing a little bit of what our protocols looked like. Mine was a little bit delayed. I think we had to wait a month or so. I had a hysteroscopy done because we started a mock transfer, which is kind of where they do the saline sonogram and check out to make sure your uterus looks good and that your pathway to do the transfer would be open. And during that mock transfer, we couldn't get the catheter through. So they do the mock transfer before you even start a retrieval process, just so that you're not sitting there with an embryo ready to be transferred and they can't get through. So that was my problem. They couldn't get through. So we scheduled a hysteroscopy shortly after to really find out what was going on. The doctor knew it was scar tissue. I had a C-section with my first. Didn't really think it was a complicated C-section. It was emergency and it was longer than normal, but I never had any symptoms or painful periods or anything like that to indicate that there would be an issue. So after the hysteroscopy, she had gotten in and said there's a whole lot more scar tissue than we thought. The next step is a laparoscopy. So at this point, we're, I believe, in October timeframe. And I went ahead and did a round of retrieval between the hysteroscopy and the laparoscopy. So I could easily do, the prep and actually do the retrieval, then have the laparoscopy done, clear out the tissue, and then potentially do a transfer after 6 weeks of healing. So I'm a calendar crazy person. So I have my fertility calendar out where I'm counting the days, and my job, I travel a whole lot. So we had to really schedule things really closely. And I found that that calendar was my therapy and the way I really could deal with getting through everything. So in October, I did a week of stims. I think it ended up being 8 days. We did Menopur and Ganirelix, and I found out how insanely expensive this whole thing is. The financial consultants there were amazing, and we figured out, that we would be paying out of pocket approximately $5,000 per cycle instead of the $12,000 that most people pay each cycle with meds on top of it. And we got very lucky. Our clinic had a grant for fertility medications, and those were significantly reduced. I think normally it's about $5,000 for all of the medications, and we ended up paying maybe $500. So we were very, very lucky. So out of that first round, I had 7 eggs retrieved, and we wanted to give them the best chance possible. I hadn't been on any supplements or anything like that, and we had 3 embryos make it to day 3. They weren't looking very good, so the doctors recommended let's just freeze them on day 3. We want to, give them the best chance. Sometimes embryos prefer to be inside to grow versus outside. So we made that plan. We froze those 3. I then went on for my laparoscopy a couple weeks later, and they thought they had untwisted the tube somehow, gotten the scar tissue away. They were labeled to get the fluid through when they did a test with the HSG while I was sedated, and woke up thinking, wow, they got 80% of the scar tissue gone that was around my uterus. And I was just in a really excited mood. I thought that that was kind of the solution. And sadly, my husband was traveling, so my mother-in-law got to hold my hand through that whole process. And my mom was traveling as well. We all travel for work quite a bit. So I was able to really feel positive after that. And I knew after 6 weeks of healing, we'd be looking at doing a transfer. So we were falling right around the holidays, and our clinic closed for the last couple of weeks in December for cleaning, and I think it's a pretty standard thing. So I knew we'd be looking at January for our first transfer. So January came along. My transfer prep, we decided we were going to do a natural transfer. I didn't take anything. I don't even think I was on progesterone injections at that point. We just monitored for ovulation, did the transfer of 2 embryos. I traveled immediately. I had to go out to LA. So I was gone during my 2-week wait, and started my period on the flight back. So it was pretty miserable. Just emotional, everything you could think of. Crying hysterically in a bathroom. First transfer, you think, okay, maybe there's going to be some luck, but it wasn't. So got home, crumpled into my husband's arms, cried. It was a mess. But I decided I want to do this again. I'm not giving up. Let's try. So we did another retrieval and transfer pretty quickly after. Um, Between the end of that cycle and then my next cycle, I did start taking CoQ10, which was a recommendation from my doctor. And that next retrieval was much more successful. Same protocol, same medications, and I got 14 eggs out of that one. And that time we decided we wanted to do a fresh transfer. At the time I was 37. We didn't have enough embryos that we wanted. We only had 2 embryos come from um, that retrieval, and we didn't want to test them because we wanted to try a fresh transfer. So did another day 3 fresh transfer. That time we did add in estrogen and PIO. So I got my first shot at shots in the butt. Very not fun, but it was important that we gave the best opportunity to the baby. But those, again, we had a failed transfer that time. So I knew something was going on. I was like, this is a little strange. Um, Actually, I believe we got delayed a month that cycle because I had a cyst. And, just having the extra month of just kind of relaxing, I was, more in my head, ready to go for that second round. But again, after that failure, I needed to think a little bit. So that was in February, March timeframe. Um, we needed to give my body a little bit of a rest. And then during normal monitoring, again, that cyst popped up. So another month was delayed. And I just was getting really frustrated. But ready to go. Figured we had at least the coverage to pay for 3 rounds of IVF, so wanted to at least maximize those opportunities. But in, I think, the May June timeframe, was getting ready again to do another cycle and found that I had hydrosalpinx. And so that left block tube that my doctor had told me about 2 years ago, one of the high risks was hydrosalpinx, where fluid can back up in the tube. That fluid can flush back out into your uterus and it can prevent anything from implanting. So we had to get that out. I had surgery scheduled in July to remove my left tube, and I was just so hopeful that that was really going to be what did it for us. Um, the recovery from that laparoscopy wasn't as bad as the prior. You just get the gas bubbles in your arm and just kind of that horrible feeling of trapped gas everywhere. But I knew to prepare for it and felt a little bit better about it. Um, so after recovery from that, I was really hopeful, but also cautiously optimistic because we had already had 2 transfers and 4 embryos that we had lost. I had 1 embryo frozen from that first cycle, but it was a day 3 embryo. We knew it wasn't that great a quality. So I was even thinking, why don't we just try transferring that one? But a transfer alone is very expensive, so it didn't make sense to just transfer one very low graded embryo. So in August, I had healed. We were ready to go. I was doing my third and thankfully final retrieval, and we had a whole lot more success. I had 15 eggs. We had 4 embryos that made it past day 3, and then ended up with 3 day 6 embryos. So we were going in for transfer, going to do a fresh natural transfer again by tracking ovulation. And um, they said your body is a day behind where these embryos need to be. It was actually on my birthday. We're sitting there ready to go full bladder, and the embryologist said, "This, I don't think you should do this. This embryo needs another day, and then your body would be off sync." So I was very thankful now, thinking back, that they made that decision. But obviously at the time, I was not okay. I was like, I wanted this to be my birthday present to have these embryos in, and just really excited. But instead, we had to wait another month. Ended up having to wait 2 more months. So, with a natural frozen embryo transfer, your body needs to ovulate on its own, and they transfer 5 days past ovulation. Well, once your progesterone hits a certain level. So, the next month, September, that cycle, I didn't ovulate on my own. I tracked and tracked and tracked, and I've always been right on track and ovulating. And that month it just didn't happen. So we had to wait another month to do our transfer. And my physician decided to put me on Femera just to get my body in the right space to make sure I ovulated. And sure enough, that next cycle, end of October, I ovulated, went in for daily blood tests to make sure my progesterone was increasing. And as soon as it got over 1, we knew we were 3 days out from transfer. So on November 3rd, we transferred our 2 embryos. We had 1 left frozen. And that was happened to also be election day. It was a pretty crazy day. It was our 3rd transfer on November 3rd. We were feeling really good, but again, cautiously optimistic. So that 2-week wait ended up being a 4-day wait. I was very anxious. I had a lot of different symptoms than I did prior. I had a lot of cramping. I had a lot more nausea, but I was also on progesterone suppositories, which was new. I had never taken those before. I had done progesterone in oil for one of my transfers, so I was familiar with the process. But my doctor decided she wanted to try no other medicines other than the progesterone suppositories and the Femera. So I am going to stop this video here, and then I'll talk about what happened on 9 days post transfer and the next steps of my pregnancy.